All right, we're going to do an X-Men movie tier list and also the Deadpool movies. I don't know if I would necessarily qualify them as X-Men because I feel like Deadpool is very strongly his own thing. And the first movie is like the highest earning R-rated movie released in America, which is just crazy. And it's more of a comedy than a superhero movie, but whatever. We'll roll with it. We'll place them, which will kind of throw off the list, but who cares? All right, so the first movie comes out, and oh my god, I was a huge fan of the '90s cartoon. Pumped for this movie. Hugh Jackman as Wolverine kills it, steals the show. They do a really good job introducing all these characters, building a world, and making it interesting. They do a pretty good job with Rogue. Rogue is a big departure from the cartoon, which is a little disappointing, but overall pretty good. Very solid superhero movie. Like pre MCU, this would have been this would be S tier, right? MCU doesn't happen, this would probably be an S tier superhero movie. Now we have X2. I'll place it in S tier for now. I don't know if it will remain there, but there's no way it goes lower than A. It's the follow-up movie. They introduce even more characters. Which X-Men, the universe. There's just an endless amount of characters. Really cool, solid movie. A better story. Just a better made movie. It is. So we'll move on to X-Men The Last Stand. I might even get rid of the D tier here. Just erase it entirely. Because I don't think it's needed. There's not enough here to really need that large of a list. So X-Men 3 The Last Stand. I actually like this movie more than a lot of people do. The Last Stand, I feel like I appreciated it both at the time, the same way that I do now, as this like goofy, over the top, bizarro crap that it kind of is. It's kind of this weird action fest, and I appreciate that about it, and somehow in some crazy way I appreciated that about it at the time. It it just kind of like goes crazy and just kind of murks everybody, and it's kind of just gibberish of a movie, but I don't think it's the worst. If you were to rank it amongst all superhero movies, it wouldn't be like bottom five, I don't think. Actually, definitely not. I recently watched the Marvels. Not saying that the Marvels would be that low, but at least in this time period of superhero movies, it wasn't like everything was done to death like it is today. Like with the modern MCU, it is just this weird, jumbled mess. People like to point out that the MCU villains, oh, they have terrible villains. DC has better villains. Of course, DC has better villains. But let's be honest here. It is not just the villains why MCU movies are kind of in this confused, bad space. It's that also the heroes, they aren't developing them, and they need to. You need to connect with these characters, and they're just having these mess of characters that are not getting actual character development, right? Like think of the Marvels. Any of you have seen the Marvels? How do any of those characters develop, right? Other than maybe Kamala Khan gets a little bit more confidence. Other than that, what even happens? Like, there's no reason to care about anything that happens, other than like, okay, Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel get a little bit of friendship. You know, it's like, why in a movie that has one of the most boring villains in a superhero movie to also make the threesome of heroes be as boring as they are in that is wild. And that's kind of like the X-Men movies have this strength of having like so many characters, and you at least care about them a little bit, right? Like there's a reason that Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is one of the most recurring characters in film history, right? It's great casting. He he just has this look about his face. Um, yeah, he plays one of the largest superheroes in existence. Pretty much, I would say that the big three in of superhero characters are Wolverine, Spider-Man, and Batman. Just popular characters that we're always going to be keep getting media from, guaranteed. Um, so to actually think about how many people have played Spider-Man on the big screen and how many people have played Batman. None of them have had anywhere the number of appearances that Hugh Jackman has as Wolverine. And that's because people connect with the characters. And you just can't connect with any of the heroes that they have in the MCU anymore, right? Like, other than, like, Hawkeye a little bit and Falcon a little bit, but that story of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you get it in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the show. And like, you're just not getting anything like that anywhere else, right? Like, you get WandaVision, where you get some kind of mild conclusion to Wanda and Vision. It's just like all of the characters that you care about have gotten some kind of end, which is great for those characters, but from a storytelling, universe building perspective, it just isn't that good. But we'll continue. X-Men 3 The Last Stand, you're getting a ton of characters and they are getting a lot of like wild action scenes. So just shut off your brain, enjoy it for the wild ride it is, and you'll understand upon watching it. Now, I don't know the chronology of. I think the next movie that was released was X-Men Origins Wolverine. But I'm going to save the Wolverine movies for after. I'm going to do the main series, X-Men films, and then go to the Wolverine films and then the Deadpool films. So, X-Men Days of Future Past, kind of, it's the fourth film of the main X-Men series films. It is good. They did what all the fans want. Nobody liked X-Men 3. I kind of liked it more than a lot of people, and I enjoyed that it was like this mindless crap show of lunacy. But Days of Future Past, there's time travel elements. Wolverine's traveling through time. It's really cool. It resets things that needed to be reset. It kind of, you can't help but leave this movie with your mind wandering of, oh my god, they actually did something. They reset the universe in a way that they really needed to here. And now they can go in all these cool directions, right? Now that didn't really happen, but some cool stuff does happen, right? In the overall film universe. So Days of Future Past, I feel like, now this is going to be controversial, but I like it more than X-Men 2. I think it's better than X-Men 2. And that's... it's just a lot more fun. Yes, X2 is like... plot-wise, it's better. But plot is such a small element of a film. To me, any story, there's two main strengths that a story can have. It's story and its characters, right? And characters are super important. And Days of Future Past introduces characters and develops characters. And by it being the fourth X-Men film and it correcting so many prior mistakes, I feel like it just gives so much hope, and there's intrigue and there's different versions of characters. I don't know. I just like it more than X2. I think it's very interesting. Maybe X-Men 2 like is a better film, but I feel like Days of Future Past is a better X-Men film. Now we move on to First Class. No, it's not great. I don't know what people like so much about this. It's a prequel and it's fine. I enjoyed it. I've got no issue with it, but I don't think it's anywhere as good as Days of Future Past. So we'll move on to the I guess the sequels to the prequel. The reset, post reset. We have X-Men Apocalypse. Cool film. People really didn't like this. Like people I think they I don't know what people thought. Now, I feel like Apocalypse deserves two movies or at least like a movie and a half, like a movie that builds him up. Definitely a little bit rushed, but they do some cool stuff. Like I like Psylocke, I like Storm. I was excited for this like young Storm. I'm like, no way. They're actually going to make Storm interesting. Crazy. Like Storm's not just like some gardener, some dull gardener who follows the rules. It actually seemed like they were going somewhere. I don't like it more than I think maybe I have to move X-Men up, and we'll move on to the. I guess we got to do Dark Phoenix. I got to put Dark Phoenix pretty low into low C tier. I actually haven't been able to finish the film. Now it is hard, right? Like I love the X-Men. I've watched the 90s animated series multiple times, but I just haven't made it through this film yet. So, I mean that goes to show you. I've probably seen X-Men 3 at least twice. So, I can it's only fair to rate it below that if I haven't actually been able to sit through the film. It is dull. Um We'll move on to X-Men Origins Wolverine. Once again, an X-Men film that I like more than most people do. I like X-Men 3 more than most people. I like Days of Future Past more than most people. I like Apocalypse more than most people do. Origins Wolverine is considered, it and Dark Phoenix are like considered to be the worst. And 3. And yeah, I kind of enjoy certain aspects of it. It's weird. It almost feels experimental in some ways. Like they didn't really entirely know what to do. Um, in this movie, kind of, it failed the trajectory of the film universe, right? Like they were going to make an X-Men off of this, make an X-Men Origins Gambit movie, which would have been incredible. To at least have them actually attempt to have Gambit. Um, Everyone wanted it, but I mean, after seeing this, I'm sure a lot of people didn't want it. This movie is infamous for taking Deadpool and sewing his mouth shut throughout him being Deadpool. Now, weirdly, he's played by Ryan Reynolds. Like Ryan Reynolds plays Deadpool in this film. Um, you might not know that, viewer. Like it would be reasonable for you to not even know that, but it does happen. It is stupid that to have not only the character Deadpool, is it crazy to sew his mouth shut, but it is. I feel like it's equally as crazy to sew Ryan Reynolds' mouth shut, right? Like the dude is known for all these like comedic roles, and even like his film roles that aren't comedic, like say like The Voices, where he plays a crazy person, um, or like even rom coms, right? Like he actually is a versatile actor, and there's a reason that he's like one of the biggest actors. There's a reason that that they're making a Deadpool 3, and that the first Deadpool is this mega success. So it is very absurd. If you would like to see Ryan Reynolds Deadpool, you also kind of get that in a movie previous to this. Um, the movie Blade Trinity, you could almost argue. Now, it wouldn't make any sense at all that it would be Ryan Reynolds, that it would be, what's his name? Wade Wilson. Like, it doesn't really make sense. You got to kind of like trick your headcanon here. But in Blade Trinity, there's like Ryan Reynolds, and I think he has a katana at some point, and like guns at a different point. So he's almost Deadpool, and it's in a Marvel superhero film. And there's also like Triple H. But yeah, Origins Wolverine. There's some cool stuff. I believe that's the one with the really cool montage where there's Wolverine and Sabretooth, and they're fighting in all these like wars. It does some things right. It just also does a lot wrong. I think I got to put it in the same tier as these other ones, but it's not as bad as 3 or Dark Phoenix. Now, The Wolverine. Once again, another film that is better than what people give it credit for. A lot of people don't like this. They're like, oh, what? Some weird side quest. Well, that's what Wolverine is as a character. Like, a lot of people don't understand who Wolverine even is as a character. He's this guy who's like much older than the rest of the team. He is almost there specifically to add dysfunction to the X-Men, right? Because who this guy is he's this loner who every time he gets close to somebody, either he just out-ages them or just outlives them, or some tragedy, right? Because he's someone who draws attention. He's got claws, right? And he's angry and intense. So his life is filled with this tragedy. So as much as he is in the X-Men, he also like doesn't want to be. So a lot of the best Wolverine moments you're ever going to get are him doing these side quests, right? Like him interacting, ideally, you'd have him interacting more with more of these like secondary and tertiary characters within the X-Men universe that you would never see, but you get the chance to see them because Wolverine's off on some side quest. So this movie, he goes to Japan. It's really cool. It's an awesome movie. You should check it out. It's a lot like X-Men 3. It's kind of like a lot of mindless action, but it's got a lot more heart than like Origins Wolverine or X-Men 3. The action is actually like better. It's actually good action. They put a lot of effort into it. Would absolutely recommend it. Now this is gonna be controversial. Maybe I move Apocalypse up there too. And maybe I like Apocalypse more than I like the Wolverine. I think Apocalypse does some really cool stuff. Like, it also has quite good action. So I think this A tier is nearly interchangeable with each other. Whereas S tier, I feel, is a little more concrete as to which is better than which. And you know what? I'm going to adjust this just slightly, right? Now, I don't know how to make this like smaller. Like, I don't know why this tier list is so crunched. But maybe I just need to move myself here so you can see a little bit better. Yeah, I'll do that. We'll put these two down here just to separate it a little more. Now we got Logan. Logan's the best one. There's no question about it. Phenomenal. Everyone was talking about this film. Fantastic. we get an awesome, awesome Wolverine. No complaints at all. Great movie. Dark. Just the best. Um, yeah. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, right? It's got like emotion. The action's great. It's bloody. The movie's sad. I haven't seen the black and white version, but apparently for a little bit they were playing black and white. You could watch this movie in full color or black and white in the movie theaters. Like even my local theater did that, but I just didn't have the time. I was in college, so having the time to be able to watch a movie twice in the movie theater just to see it, in black and white. I should have. Now that I think about it, I should have done it, but I was pretty busy at the time. So let's move on to the Deadpool movies. I kind of want to start with Deadpool 2. Deadpool 2 I liked, again, a lot more than most people did. I think it clearly belongs right here, right below the first X-Men, in A tier. I'm considering moving one of these two down to B tier, but really I can't. They're awesome movies. I will move Apocalypse higher than the Wolverine. Apocalypse is awesome. All these movies in S and A tier are awesome. Like, no doubt, like, very strong movies. Deadpool 2 is almost as good as the first one. Or maybe not almost as good. Right? I'll just place Deadpool, and then I'll talk about the two Deadpool films. Know where Deadpool places, to me, I think this should be obvious to anyone. You are absolutely delusional if you thought this would place anywhere but the absolute top of S tier. This movie was like the biggest R-rated movie in America, in history, right? I don't know if it still is, but this movie was enormous. Like, just like when Logan came out, everyone was watching Logan. Everyone was talking about Logan. People who don't give a crap about superheroes, like I said, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is one of the biggest characters in cinematic history, right? And so even if somebody doesn't give a crap about the X-Men or superhero films, they've probably at least encountered one of these films. They're at least somewhat familiar with the character. So this story of this old man Logan it just hits home for so many people. The movie is so well done. Everyone was hyped about it. More so after it came out, like from the trailers and stuff. Only people like me who like care about these films and knew that this film was gonna have like blood and was gonna be more gory than other iterations. Like if most people didn't know that, right? So they had no reason to be excited for this film at all. But yeah, people who just your mainstream moviegoers, your person who goes to the movie theaters like twice a year, they were all over this. Everyone was talking about it. It was huge. But let's be serious. Deadpool was bigger. Deadpool was crazy. Deadpool took over. I believe it was the year 2016 it came out. Enormous. Right? Like, think about what DC was pooping out at that time. They had like not Justice League, Suicide Squad, and I forget if BVS was out or like it could have been BVS. Just total crap, stinkers of the highest magnitude. But Deadpool, oh wow, like just a great comedy. You don't have to be a superhero fan at all to enjoy Deadpool or Logan, but Deadpool especially. Like, we all know it. Ryan Reynolds, fantastic comedic actor, does an incredible job. And of course, like the writers and filmmakers and everything. And yeah, Deadpool 2 lacks, right? It doesn't live up. It it does some really cool things. Like look at the art there, the poster, if that's what it is. Like the woman who has the good luck, her superpower is that she's just really lucky. That's still awesome. I still reference that. I'm like, if I could have a superpower, that might be it, right? They say with great power comes great responsibility. Um, like the last X-Men's actually a really good example of why having superpowers would torture you, right? Like think about Deadpool, how tortured of a character that is, or Wolverine, or Charles Xavier, or Jean Grey, right? Like Charles Xavier in particular, those scenes where he's hooked up to Cerebro, holy, does that seem awful, right? Like if you had the power to go into somebody else's mind, that would drive you insane, right? There's no way it wouldn't. So to be like connected to all these people's minds at once would be a torture beyond imagining. So yeah, this is the list. If you want to imagine it without the Deadpool films, that's totally reasonable. As I don't even know it, they're just in a totally different category, right? Like they're comedy films. Um, and I think the problem, like I was getting at earlier, is with these MCU movies and the superhero genre in general. It's not just that we've seen too many of them in a short amount of time, and they've dominated like movie theaters. They've dominated Hollywood. It's that the films and the filmmakers and the studios, they aren't putting out things that are different. They aren't making you care about the heroes. And that's the strength of the X-Men, is that you have some characters to be interested in, right? Like Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique, um, Xavier, Magneto. They do a good job of balancing some of these characters. I would have, at so many points, I wish they would have highlighted a few more of them, right? Like I said with Storm, they kind of like had this newer, younger Storm. Oh, maybe I genuinely was like, oh man, make a Storm film. You need to make a Storm film. Have her be this new, spunky, um, like a Storm with some real flavor. She's not just this gardening mother figure. Have her be young, kicking butt Storm. And then obviously with Gambit, bring that guy, bring that dude. Um, dive a little deeper into some other characters. I'm excited to see Wolverine return to the big screen, but you have this mountain of characters, and so does just like the MCU, like Marvel in general or DC in general. They have a giant plethora of characters to choose from, of which there's so many stories already written that they could reproduce or create an alternative version or do whatever they want with these characters. So it's so disappointing when I watch something like the Marvels and they do nothing. They do nothing of interest besides, oh, like, I mean, they have a dance scene. That's interesting. I kind of liked that scene. But it's like, just give me a movie of that or something. I don't know. Like, don't. It's like they're stuck on this idea of what a superhero film is. And it's not just Marvel. They're so restricted by this idea that it has to have these like action sequences that are always underwhelming. And you need to like reach outside of what a superhero film is and also what an action film is, right? Like now the movie Deadpool, it does have action. It definitely does. But I feel like it's just kind of like there in addition, and sometimes it just serves the comedy of the film. Deadpool is a comedy film first and foremost. And I would kind of like some of these films to like dive deeper and like see beyond the restrictions, the confinement, the chains of just an action film. Because you have so much characters to play with and such a big universe and so many rules you can mess around with, right? That's the thing, right? Like, think about Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and what he does throughout these films. And that's it's important because think about the variety of things that he does do and all of the things that he could do, right? Like, we focus so much on Origins Wolverine and the crappy Deadpool depiction that they did there. But the reason why that matters is because you think about what they could have done. We could have already gotten our Deadpool 3, but have it be X-Men Origins Wolverine. They could have done it way back then when that movie came out, right? The movie they're making now could have been released then. And what would have happened then, right? Like, think about how crazy that would have been. Like, you literally had Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool. They were there. They were on screen. That was the movie. They just did it really wrong. And they were under a different, like, set of mental blockades, of ideas of what a superhero film is and what it has to be, right? Like, think about it. Somehow, at that time, you have conventions going on all over the world. Now, convention culture wasn't as big as it was then. These conventions weren't as huge as they were, but they were still pretty big, right? And you had conventions all over the place. And you know what people were dressing up as at those conventions? The same thing that they were in 2015, 2016, 2017. Deadpool. You're seeing Deadpool everywhere, right? Just like you're always seeing Spider-Man. You're always seeing Misty from Pokemon. You're seeing these characters, and they for some reason didn't see the power of the fandom, right? Like, it's not just that they did an incredible job with 2016's Deadpool. It's that there was an enormous fan base pleading for it as well. And that does matter, right? There's a snowball effect. Just like the movie Logan, people were talking about it and word of mouth spread. And it went from this movie that no one was really that interested in seeing from the trailer, besides the fans who were already locked in and going to see it anyway. Like, there was no additional interest until people started seeing it, and the buzz grew around it, right? Same with the movie The Hangover. Like, The Hangover had a boring, crappy trailer. No one cared about The Hangover until The Hangover had been in theaters for a couple of weeks, and everyone who saw it was like, this comedy is wild. This is crazy. This is nothing like the trailer. You got to go see this comedy. And then everyone went and saw the comedy. Everyone went to go see The Hangover, and it produced multiple sequels, right? And so, my ultimate point here is that the strength of the X-Men films is that they have a giant sandbox. And I want them to please continue playing in that sandbox and pick up where MCU has dropped the ball, right? Where they are so stuck to what they think an action movie, a superhero movie has to be, and to go crazy with it. Like, they can make a comedy and make it be good, right? Like, they can make a film that's entirely a comedy and it work, right? Like, two films that are come into play that are important here: Thor: Love and Thunder and Thor: Ragnarok. Thor: Ragnarok is awesome. You have Hulk and Thor, awesome. So much awesomeness. The comedy works. Love and Thunder, it doesn't really work nearly as well. But they did it in Thor: Ragnarok. They proved that they could do it, right? And they wanted to just replicate that formula, but they didn't like innovate in any way. They didn't do anything different other than what we all expected, which was a Thor: Ragnarok ripoff. They just happened to do an even worse job than what any of us expected them to do. right? But they could have ended up doing a good job. They should have maybe got a different, done some things differently. But look at even the DC movies, like the crap show that was like Batman versus Superman or Justice League, just terrible, awful films. Like DC has dropped the ball bigger than the MCU has, because you know who DC has access to? Tons of characters that you see people dress up as. The amount of times at conventions and like Halloween's where I've seen people dress up as the character Poison Ivy. You know how long it's been since we've gotten a big screen live action Poison Ivy? Think about it. Think about how truly. Think about how much of a household name that character is. That people would love to see, and we just don't. It's ridiculous. It's actually like really bizarre, right? Like think about how many times you've seen Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, a character, a superhero that no one cares about, that nobody was asking for to be made into a movie to see on screen. No one wanted this. No one gave a crap about that character, and pretty much still no one does. But you have a character that people dress up as, people care about passionately in Poison Ivy, but they just don't give us Poison Ivy, just like they didn't give us Deadpool. Just like they don't give us what we want. There's still like these huge opportunities, right? There's so many characters within the X-Men. And think about how they function as this. Think how they're like this big dysfunctional group. And there's so much storylines in the X-Men that are so cool. So awesome. It's just this giant, like, it's like a pirate buried this treasure. And we have like 100 treasure maps that show exactly how to get to it, where we have this like set where this tier list is filled, where it's 10 times the size of what it is, and we have like an S tier of like 30 films or something, right? That can happen. That can easily happen. They just won't do it. They just won't give us what we want. That being said, they're going to give us Deadpool 3, so they are kind of giving us what we want. We will eventually get what we want. It's just going to take way longer than it should. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for the new cartoon. Are you? Let me know.